And we are local, and we have a great website which gets a lot of traffic. And I am here to talk to you about how journalism is going to change as a result of social media. And the reason I'm saying is going to change because I'm going to be talking a little bit more about a Pakistan-centric model. What's happening in Pakistan as it's moving towards journalism with social media just coming and starting to impact all of us. So in order to approach this subject, I don't know how far you guys are well educated about like some basic facts about Pakistan and online. So I'm going to introduce those, okay? So first question first, how many of us are online?
Right now?
Yeah, right now. Like how many of you guys use the internet regularly? No, just overall. Alright. So pretty much everyone, yeah? This is Pakistan's actual graph. This is sourced from the World Bank. So we have about 20.35 million Pakistanis who are online in 2009. So you can estimate from then it's grown to about 23, 24 million people, which is actually a really, really good number because once 3G kicks in, we can expect extreme accelerated growth up to 400% more. And what that means is that we are going to be we are already among the top 20 countries in the world with people who have access to the internet. And that has great implications because luckily we have a large population, and that means we will be able to use social media to bring our issues to the forefront easily, because at the end of the day it is sort of a numbers game, you know. You might notice something very interesting. We beat Egypt, which I mentioned earlier as well. And they had
Vietnam and the small countries.
Yeah.
Vietnam, Colombia.
Well, these are the early adopters. These are the ones who decided that, you know, we're going to do it. They are either early adopters or they have very, very large populations who are coming online to a certain extent. So this is something to be aware of, and this is what we as traditional media, I'm going to be talking about me as a traditional media guy, even though I'm not, but this is what we in traditional media have to start looking at. 20 million people is a huge number and they have to be referred to. Are you reading my t-shirt? My t-shirt says protected by Satan. I wrote that way. So, just to give you guys an idea, on Facebook we have about 4.6 million Pakistanis. So that might be an interesting number for you guys. So it's no joke. I mean, people who say 4.6 million out of 160 or 180 million people, that's nothing special. It's only for the elite and this and that. 4.6 million people is an entire country. Some countries aren't even that big. So we have a big voice, and it's quite important. On Twitter, I don't have the actual statistics, so I'm just going to say a lot. But this is going to grow rapidly because I think we've all learned so far that Twitter is actually a very effective tool towards social change, perhaps more so than Facebook. Now the question is, like, how many of us are reading news online? Okay, I just got some statistics together. So yeah, go ahead.
No, I thought you were asking how many of us are reading news online.
That's a good question. How many of us are reading news online?
Depends on what the news is.
That's a lot of people. That's a good number of people. Okay, let me give you an idea of some local websites. Dawn gets about 75,000 visitors per day, reading 275,000 news articles in a single day. Okay, don't mean to be mean to the Dawn media guys, but their print edition is about 70,000. So their website is actually more important. Now, journalists are yet to understand this fact, that actually their stories are working better online than they are in print. For the Express Tribune, close to 70,000 if you just had to give a ballpark figure. Tribune has about 67,000 visitors per day, reading 190,000 articles per day. Now here is the interesting aspect of the local language, which I was talking about. This is the Daily Express. It's an Urdu paper which is national. I'm not going to comment too much on like the competition. Feel free. Yeah. So Pakistan Today. So just to give you a comparison, the Urdu version, Jung, is getting 100,000 visitors per day, reading a phenomenal 833,000 articles per day. So you can imagine the impact the Jung group is having online. And yet, how many people have been to the Jung group's website or geo.tv? It's terrible. It's appalling. You can barely use it. There's hardly any social media integration. And as a result, they're losing out. You might notice that the Express Tribune or Dawn seem to dominate online, even though they're not. As you can see, the numbers are saying that they aren't. And yet there's a perception that they are. And the reason for that is because these guys have not understood the nature of what it means to be part of new media or social media. And by this, what I mean is you have to understand how you guys work as a group.
You need to hire a good hunter.
So, how does this impact the news online? Now, this is the results from a Pew poll, which was done in the US very recently. So what they were trying to investigate was what media is impacting how many people and for what reason. So TV is still the biggest source of news. That's what they found. 78% of people in that Pew poll in the US said that TV is where they go for the news. But surprisingly, the second most visited place was the internet at 61%, which is a very, very close number, which means the internet is slowly gaining importance everywhere. TV you can't beat because it gives you that immediacy, but even that might be something which will be tackled in a little bit. Here's the interesting aspect of that survey. It also found out that 75% of people get news via social media and email, and we've seen this on our website as well. Email, even though you don't think about it because you're like, social media is Facebook, social media is Twitter, social media is all these new tools. Well, email also has a social function and it's still extremely active. So, don't assume social media is just these very small limited number of tools. So how is the Pakistani media responding to this? I have one word, bad. They do one of two things. They will either completely ignore the issue or, and by this what I mean is that they don't have a web presence at all. There's a lot of papers, there's a lot of media groups out there who don't have anything. There are some who have developed small websites. The Daily Times website, for example, is trying to reach out to people. It's got a very basic old layout, static, which means that you cannot engage with the person. The problem is they are still assuming that people are sheep, which is a different model of how you think about the people who are viewing the news. So if I'm the big media guy, I'm thinking I'm going to broadcast this on TV, and it's going to go across to millions of people, and they're just going to sit there and listen to it. Well, we've learned that this is not the case. How many of us have strong opinions about Geo or Summer TV? We all have opinions about these people, and we talk about it amongst each other. The great thing about social media is that it turns you from sheep into people who are actually going to drive the conversation and shape these media groups. But the problem is they aren't recognizing that. I'm going to be talking about a model which includes all of you guys, and it talks about how you sitting in this room are kind of similar to what is happening on social media. It's called the hive theory, okay? I took some time out and I found a couple of journalists in the Express Tribune who use social media to some extent or are involved with it. As I said, our website is quite interactive. So I asked them this question: how does Facebook and Twitter impact you as a reporter, as an editor, as a journalist? So let's see what they have to say. Yeah. How do you feel Facebook and Twitter impact the news?
Well, I think for journalists in particular, both of these are great tools for news gathering, right? Because you have a wide spectrum of opinions of people not just from Pakistan, but also our news readership beyond Pakistan, right? So you not only get feedback on the kind of stories and stuff that you're doing, but also you get to hear a lot of questions about background and context that sometimes as Pakistani journalists we forget to put into our stories.
We have a lot of reporters and citizen journalists, who aren't formally working for a newspaper, tweeting things. And a lot of the times we know about things when they're tweeted more than just what we watch on TV.
My pieces, a lot of them are picked up from Facebook and Twitter and stuff like that. The Sharmina Bair thing was picked up from there. My pictures often come from there. My fashion pieces come from there. The new piece I'm doing today about Beheaded Brigade, I know it's popular through Facebook, so I'm picking it up about that. So in that way it makes you different to my news.
After the stories have been published, you get to hear a lot of good feedback and you get to hear a lot of criticism, which often is constructive and often is not constructive, but I think it's a good way to hear about what people are thinking of your story, which you may not, because not necessarily somebody will come up to you and criticize your story to your face. And I think online people feel like they can do it anonymously or they can do it behind this cloak of the website, of their web profiles, and that's an interesting indicator as well.
Your Twitter audience is basically sometimes just sucking up to you. So like friends will retweet friends' things and say, oh, that's really good. But sometimes not so good things get retweeted and people say they're good, but they're not really that good.
People want to be the first to tell
each other what's happening. So it's a race to be the first, to get the first blog out there, to get the first story out there, to get the first opinion out there.
Your writings, whatever they may be, instantly reach a much, much larger audience than they would, say, in the age in the pre-social media age. But there's also another benefit to a writer, to a journalist, and that is story identification. Sometimes there's a lot of story. I mean, look, we're dealing with information overload here, right? But sometimes there's a lot of niche stories and a lot of small events that you don't hear about unless you're on social media. And also, many times, social media itself is the story. You know, I mean, case in point, the Facebook fan pages that were put up after Mumtaz Qadri, now in a sort of a hidebound editorial system in which people are like, you know, we are just going to look at hard news, that would never become the news. So it helps you not only stay on top of the trends, but if you're smart enough, predict the shape of things to come in terms of what people are talking about, what issues are going to be relevant in the near future, and also whether or not people sell camel milk in Pakistan. They do, and I found out from Facebook. Now that would make a great story too.
These guys kind of are getting it, but it takes a lot to understand what it means to be part of the hive. Now the hive is actually the theory which I was going to be talking about, which is how we all act online. So in order to demonstrate how the hive works, I'm going to pop up a few pictures for you, and all the Pakistani people here can react. I want you guys to either react by clapping or by booing. So you have two options, yeah? So I need everyone to react, alright? Okay, first picture, reaction. Yeah, sorry, I just threw that in randomly. So this is actually the hive theory in action. What you guys are doing is essentially what you will see happening on any social network. You guys are communicating with each other. You guys are trying to formulate opinions. Another aspect of it is that you can see each other. So this is not just what you're saying, but it's also the other things you put up, your information page. What can you tell about what a person is up to aside from what they're saying? The next one is, can you put together a consensus opinion based on all of this stuff? So should Rehman Malik have done that PhD piece? No. And I think a lot of people on Facebook have already expressed this. So that's one thing. And now here's the interesting aspect of new media which journalists need to understand. It's, let's make pages that protest against that PhD award, and let's take it to the streets. This is how you can take social media and drive from just a piece of news. For example, if we put up a news report about Rehman Malik, it won't contain the opinion or the context. You guys are adding it. You guys are adding all that context, and that is what journalists need to pay attention to. And that is what I teach in all my workshops. Here I have to reverse the process. Whereas over there I'm telling reporters and editors, you guys need to read your comments. You guys need to see what's going on over there. Sometimes, sometimes we get the most excellent story leads put into our comments. And I'm always like, reporters, are you paying attention? Are you listening to what people are saying? So that's really become an important and vital thing for journalists to understand. So, as I was explaining, you are now the editors. So you have a very important role. Previously, print editors think they control the news. I'm taking an example from the Express Tribune. So, check this out. These are the front page headlines from October 17th. Let's see how many people read the Waqta story. Nobody read the Waqta story. 75% of terror suspects set free in Punjab. Who read that? A couple of people, okay? Not many. And the third headline we could take on their page was, wait your turn, PM Gilani tells Sharif. This is the everyday rhetoric we hear. They're on TV and they're going blah, 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 blah. And the newspaper editors feel that they need to take this on the front page because every paper will be coming on the front page. You guys don't seem very interested in these headlines. And let me tell you, being a website editor, I know how people feel. I can see what stories they're interested in. So, this is the story on the Kinnaird College shootout. How many people heard about the Kinnaird College shooting? Yeah? You guys were interested in it? On October 17th, this was the #1 story on the website. far outpacing all these other stories which are also there in very important positions, but they didn't take precedence because you guys were the editors. You guys all did this Facebook likes. You started commenting on this piece, and you led that thing. The second headline was Shabazz Taseer is somewhere in Waziristan, says Rahman Malik. How many people heard about that? Yeah? A lot of you. See how you guys are dictating the news online? You guys actually selected which news goes highest. Because on our website, we developed it to be social media friendly. So if you start liking or reading a story, it goes to the top automatically. So you set the headlines. Last but not least, we have this story, and this was a rather bizarre story. I didn't know if I should include it, but there was a peer in a very small province who was raping a girl in order to cure her from headaches. Now, this is a story from a small provincial area, which you would say, what is the point of social media for people in rural areas or for people anywhere else? What is the point? Check it out. The Wagta story didn't do well on print, even though it was on headline 1 on our front page. What did well was the peer story because people could really relate to that suffering. And as a result, you never know what will happen, but you guys are setting the precedent. You're saying this is the issue I care about, and this is what I want to see online. So this is another place where journalism is going to be fundamentally changing, because the conversations you are having and what you are dictating as important is going to be taking a very critical role. This is what I meant with comments, feedback, and criticism. And over here I was going to use a blog as an example. Because I count blogging as a part of journalism in the sense that you guys are addressing issues. It's more like opinions and editorial, but it still plays a vital role. We had a blog which was about namaz. And this was a guy who was saying namaz is not just a personal matter. He was trying to say that no, we should be, I don't agree with people forcing people into religion, but I do think that it's a little more than just a personal matter. So we got a lot of feedback on that, and just to show you like how it impacts people. This was Farnaz Zahibi Muazzam, who said, heartfelt and honest write-up, and kudos to the Tribune to publish the other side of the picture too, because we have taken a lot of blogs which said, namaz is not a personal thing, religion is not something which should come out of the bedroom and Diego. So, agreed. And we also put the recommend button. So that adds another layer of your social media and how new media has an impact. Because on this story, if you recommend a story, it goes up. So now, perhaps you are not, and we were talking about keyboard activists and how they're completely useless. Imagine this. This person left this comment and it got 119 recommends, which means it goes right to the top, which means, okay, fine, you did not formulate an opinion, but you did the little bit of act of voting. It's a democratic process whereby you said this is what I believe in, or this is what I recommend as an opinion I count. And that gets knocked up and people take notice, and that is how we come to an understanding of issues and dialogue, which is essential to things. Similarly, you'll get dissent. This is the great part about being online. You will get people who will disagree with your opinion, and they will challenge it to the death. And I can tell you one thing, Pakistanis love a good fight. They all come online to have a big fight, and yes, a lot of the times it's futile conversation which has no point, but at the same time you can identify an issue and kind of start delving into it, or at least looking at it in a different way. Even if at the very least, as someone said, I go to the Tribune Facebook page only to disagree with everything they say. That's well and good. You're giving our editors a chance to understand where you're coming from and what we're missing. And I don't know about other websites, but we keep track of it. I keep a track of it, and I let our print editors know who perhaps, okay fine, they're not too media savvy, but that's what we have to inform them. But the whole process is led by how far you guys are willing to take part in it. And that is kind of what I want you guys to think about. Because you can be part of the story. I use this graphic a lot because it's the typical Twitter guy sitting on his pond talking about weird too. Yeah, it is a weird too. He's actually the guy who tweeted the Osama bin Laden thing. This was a popular cartoon I made. So I always imagined him just sitting there on the pod saying, oh, I think I hear a helicopter going by in Ahmedabad. Anyway, he went from like a couple of hundred followers to 100,000 just because he was doing that. And he didn't do it in a journalistic fashion. He didn't do it to like spread news or information. He was just doing his regular personal updates, sitting on the pot as I described it. So don't always assume you know what impact or what little impact your activities online will have. They could shape things in a radical way. So you cannot, basically what I'm trying to say is that you have to make an effort to do things, be proactive, because you might cause change. Another great example from Twitter was this guy called KSC Wala, who I recommend you follow him because he's always giving Karachi updates. And in Karachi, we hate the KSC, okay? Everyone hates the KSC, even though that's changing slightly. And the reason it's changing is because they have people like KSC Wala online. He's a guy who works in KSC. He's not a PR representative, but he talks about his job. He talks about being in KSC, how people hate KSC, how he hates KSC himself when the light goes, but how they're trying to deal with the issue. And you believe someone like that, and as a result, he can take the KSC's issue forward simply by being himself. So this is something you have to think about. Think about what you're passionate about, and perhaps make that the focus of who you are online.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Think journalists should think in a way that, what people want to listen, or should they take a perspective of what they want to express?
I believe, and this is the great thing, journalism the world over, I think, is responding badly in general to social media and new media because everyone is challenged by this changing aspect of it. They always assume people were sheep who could at most respond by a letter to the editor or writing a letter to a broadcast TV thing making a complaint or something. How likely was that to get anywhere? Almost nowhere. So now people are changing their opinions, but it's a slow process. What I'm saying is that you guys are leading the process. You are forcing them to change. Because what's happening is the more you start changing your behaviors and start responding to the news, that is going to force the media groups to respond. We as journalists will now start paying attention. I know, for example, due to our website, all the other websites have started changing because they want to get social media friendly to cater to you guys. Because at the end of the day, information has to be processed and spread in any means necessary. And you guys are going to have to be leading that. Okay. Just to give you an example of how important Twitter can be and how you guys are actually becoming part of the news or becoming a news source. This is actually a report from the PNS Mehran attack. And the Express Tribune did it live, which means that we were typing and putting up the updates as soon as we got them. Traffic went crazy off the hook. And we were like, how do we bring in context to the story? Because how many people think the media is biased? Everyone thinks the media is biased. Okay, that's a typical thing to say, and I agree with it. The media is biased. But let's say we're playing our role in reporting a breaking news event like the PNS Mehran attack, and we feel very strongly that we want to make a strong statement about this attack. But we can't, because we as journalists are playing a role of being objective during the attack. So what do? We turned to Twitter, and we were like, well, what are the people on Twitter saying about this attack? Okay, and we got some very, very interesting responses, and I was like, you know what? Pick up those responses, put a little Twitter update in your story, and run them. Marvi Sirman talking about the Taliban and Al-Qaeda and condemning them. Now, we didn't have that in our story. We can't come out and say, oh, and we condemn the Taliban for this attack, but we can take your responses into our stories, which we have started doing. If you think that the attacks are being carried out by CIA/RAW, how would pulling out of the war/ending drones end them? A very interesting debate point. Again, editorial and opinion coming from you, taken into a news story. How many of you remember this video? Yeah. Oh, 15 minutes? Okay. I have 15 minutes, so I'm going to go through this really fast. Russia, the SWAT flogging, okay? The Pakistan army beating down innocent people in Fata. And last but not least, my favorite one, Amir Savage. And all these stories made it big for almost definitely one reason. Yes, traditional media picked up on them and took them forward, but these stories would have completely died out if it hadn't been for social media. Sarfaraz Shah's video was uploaded, and it was carried around by a lot of people on Facebook and Twitter, and as a result, it became the mainstream news. Similarly, the SWAT flogging video was anonymously put up online, and that caused an enormous change in foreign policy, in fact. The Pakistan Rangers and Pakistan's army and the beating up raised a lot of important issues, and again, it was led by people like you. So what I'm trying to say is, fine, you might be playing a small role by adding a comment, but you might also be playing a big role by actually being a news source, especially if you have a mobile phone in hand, you know. Similarly, Amir Liaquat, did you see that news in traditional media? I almost didn't see it in traditional media. It was entirely an online phenomenon, but I think he got exposed pretty badly.
He's still in media.
He's still in media, but let's not
But
forget.
he discussed this issue on his show at
Yeah.
AR.
Yeah.
Didn't actually?
Sure. He discussed the show on, but the point I'm trying to make is that story would have died if it hadn't been for online. Now, you, I think, are making the argument that, well, it was bad because it's trying to defame someone based on something which has been put up online. That is a good point, and that's the negative aspect of this whole thing. We'll come to that in the question and answer session. I'm going to run through this really quick. So, you can join hands and protest against Rehman Malik. You can make a page. You can take up a video. You can share a tweet about something which perhaps isn't news for everybody, but it is news for some people. I found this pretty interesting. That is what you have to do. In conclusion, social media has made journalism part of our identity. The stories you share and comment on define who you are. And it's not just who you are. It's about you guys acting as a hive, those bees who interact together and form a collective opinion and identity. Social media has given everyone the power to shape the news, which means that your sharing, your comments, your ability to put up a video or a blog will be able to actually be the journalism. Why should you rely on media groups to be journalism? You can be journalism in itself. And finally, social media and new media has given us all the power to change the news. The most important aspect, which is once you have established something, once you know something for sure, how do you take action upon it? And that too can be done via new media. Perhaps the most important aspect, we're one step beyond journalism. Okay, question time.